Okay, so speaking of farming, how's that for a segue? Speaking of farming, look, there is a push these days for, farm to table. We like the idea of locally sourced ingredients and all of those things. And yet we don't pay a lot of attention to the needs of our farmers, whether it's here in the state of Georgia or whether it's nationally or internationally. But that is changing. The folks at Emory University's Goizueta School are working with farmers both here and abroad. And joining me on the phone right now to talk about it is Professor Peter Roberts. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing very well.
First of all, before we get into your work with sort of farming in general and the upcoming events and all of that you guys have going on, this whole movement in business towards social enterprise is not brand new, but it's sort of really bubbling up, I think, for a lot of people now. So how much focus is there at Goizueta about social enterprise?
Yeah, and the business school here, the center that I run, we've been in operation, I think, now for about 7 years, formerly for about 4. And so in terms of volume of activity, I consider ourselves kind of a small but important bubbling piece.
Okay.
But I do think in the next 5 to 10 years, as people ramp up their expectations for what business and markets can do to address societal problems, we'll be growing.
Do you feel like that's what the students are looking for now? Are they? I mean, I know everybody says that millennials are really, wanting to give back. I think that kind of takes something away from the rest of us who also maybe like to give back. But, they are saying this is the trend. Do you feel like it's going to continue?
Yeah, no, I think the giving back thing's always been there, and you see massive examples of it. I think what we're seeing among young people is that kind of at the same time trying to develop careers while they think about kind of giving forward.
Right.
So that whole, the most impressive Gates example of making a lot of money and then turning your attention to societal problems. I think we're seeing more and more folks that want to do both things at the same time.
Right. And obviously that is very possible in many, many cases. So why farming in particular? Why the interest in sort of helping Georgia farmers and farmers abroad?
So from a business school perspective, and it's kind of what makes it exciting for people like me, you're seeing the demand side pick up where not lots of people, but fairly well-off people are interested in spending more for better experiences around food and drink.
Yeah.
And so what you have from an economic or a business perspective is a lot of attention at the point of purchase is going back towards farms. But it's a sad fact, both locally and around the world, is that the markets haven't figured out a way to get these special farmers compensated in the same way that others in the channel do. So we're trying to figure out just how to make that market links work for more folks.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting thing to think through, right? Because are the farmers actually making more money as this interest grows in farm to table and in sort of these higher quality, locally sourced ingredients?
Yeah, I think so. The answer, I think, at the margin is probably yes. But if you kind of think about the idea of going from making sure that farmers aren't poor to making sure that farmers prosper, so I think that idea of kind of thinking through the distribution of potential returns. And so take more of those awesome coffee farmers or those awesome produce growers and say that if, someone's going to a restaurant and looking to spend 100%, 200% more than they would otherwise, they're really paying for the farm. And so what we'd like to do is just figure out how to get some of those distributions of returns, down so we can actually talk about more farmers that are actually genuinely well off as opposed to just getting by.
So can you tell me a little bit about the Farmers Benefits Project?
So that's working. We got good friends over at Georgia Organics and kind of shared interest. We started this with an interest in global coffee growers, and whenever we went through and talked about as specialty coffee blows up, how can we get, coffee farmers get paid more? And then people around Georgia go, you do know the Georgia farmers aren't getting paid.
Ooh.
And so what Georgia Organics is trying to do is a multiplex approach to try to make sure that they can handle issues related to farmer prosperity. And then they came over and we started working together on a specific project that says, right now, not enough farmers make enough to have health benefits and disability insurance. And it's a fairly dangerous profession, so we're going to start trying to work to try to put security into these early young farmers so they can grow their businesses and, ultimately, take care of themselves and their families like you and I can.
So the health insurance issue is obviously a super complicated issue for everyone, I think, in the country right now. But is it worse for farmers? Again, is it because of the amount of money they're bringing in? Is it because they're all sort of their own businesses? What's going on in particular for them?
There is that kind of notion of the Medicare gap that everybody deals with.
Yeah.
But if you look at what some of these small small specialty farmers are, is that a lot of them disproportionately fall into that, especially as they're developing their incomes in their farms.
Yeah.
And so when you're kind of most vulnerable and you think about that entrepreneurial moment of trying to develop that business, it just creates this inordinate amount of vulnerability. And partners at Georgia Organics want to recognize that and just see if the broader populations that's interested in more better local food can come together and come up with a solution that helps to bridge as we get through.
Absolutely. All right. We are talking to Professor Peter Roberts this morning. He's the academic director of social enterprise at Goizueta at Emory University. And we're sort of talking about farms both here in Georgia, and you mentioned coffee farming sort of abroad. So talk a little bit about the struggles that those people are having.
Yeah, it's kind of the same thing but magnified. I spent about 15 years studying various aspects of the wine industry, and kind of a post-Mondavi in the United States, you see the top end blow up, where there's all kinds of money being spent on excellent wine, and you're starting to see that in coffee. But the difference between wine and coffee is vineyards and wineries are cheek and jowl, so markets get a chance to work and vineyard owners get paid. The structure of coffee is that we roast and consume it here, but it's kind of grown in countries that are closer to the equator.
Right.
So you have this real discrepancy in incomes that has an awful lot to do with the fact that both sides of the market never see each other. And so what we're trying to do is figure out how to make markets work a little bit better by getting more information, more connectivity through, so you have a chance for well-placed farmers in places like northern Nicaragua can actually make enough money so their communities can prosper.
So you guys have an event coming up to sort of bring all of this to more people's attention. Can you tell me a little bit about it?
Yeah, that's tomorrow night, weather permitting. So we brought those two interests together, and the Specialty Coffee Association meetings are being held here in Atlanta later on this week. And so we thought it was a really good opportunity to try to induce some of the specialty coffee growers that we do and don't know to come to the farm along with some of Georgia's small farmers. And then what we do is we bring the coffee and we bring the produce, and then we have a really amazing roster of chefs and mixologists and baristas from around Atlanta. And they're going to be cooking up concoctions, hors d'oeuvres, and desserts and drinks. And everyone will have a chance to kind of see how awesome life can be from a consumer perspective when all these things come together. And then we just want to remind folks, as you either head back into Atlanta or head into the Specialty Coffee Association meetings, that we do have to think about ways for the growers to prosper as the rest of us, get to really benefit from this local food and specialty coffee movements.
Yeah, and so the event's open to everyone, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So we'll have about 200 people that'll be going down to Love is Love Farm at Gaia Gardens down in East Atlanta, and Joe Reynolds is our partner down there, farmer, but also on the Georgia Organics board.
Nice.
And he just does an amazing job of getting people who, a lot of us already appreciate what's going on in food and coffee, but Joe does a really nice job of situating the event right on his farm, so it'll be special.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. Professor Peter Roberts from Emory University talking with us this morning about the farmers here in Georgia, the farmers abroad, and bringing all that together for an event, again, happening April 12th. That is tomorrow night, called Taking It to the Farm. We will post links to the event on our show notes page at biz1190.com/Dana Barrett, so you can get all the details there if you'd like to go.